Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. Thursday, I really had a major evolutionary leap, and it came out in very, very aggressive words, aggressive thought processes, aggressive communication, because I really saw things for what they were. And I saw the framework of our society is built upon worshiping gods and demigods and the hierarchy status that goes along with it. And yeah, why we have a pyramid of sorts, which I guess when you either sustain a society with some people with more intelligence over others, the pyramid must exist, because it means that either you're trying to, well, in a society with deficits, you're keeping the people at the bottom, and you're keeping people at the top, and there is no way for people to rise above their station. Okay, well, I'm proposing that in the next society, the next world, is that, yeah, we still have the pyramid, because there's still people that are going to have more intelligence, more knowledge, and are going to be far more motivated to better themselves and rise above their station. And then there's going to be people below them who absolutely have no desire to rise above their station, to evolve. And so you must always have somebody direct someone who is less than. Now, I'm not saying that they're not capable of rising above, but they choose not to. And so I think everyone can be equal if they get out of their own way and they have an environment and a space to evolve. But there are people around other people who will not allow someone who is less than the space to evolve. And so, yes, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of this hierarchy status of a pyramid, like what you see with the Illuminati type of thing, okay? No matter what your feelings are about it. That does exist and will continue to exist, because people will keep themselves at a very specific place. And so you acknowledge that. And so, yeah, so I realized that the whole, the god, demigod type of belief system, and the Bible recounting past events are like formulas and like chemical reactions, the recipes for a society to behave in a specific way. And it's very archaic. The Bible is very archaic. Some of the old texts are very archaic. I think there could be other ways we can explain how the world began, though I know everyone has their ideas of how the world began, and that's why we have so many different religions. But when you bring everything down to physics, it doesn't need to go into religion, because physics is taking the different elements in the universe and biodiversity and breaking everything down to its most reduced state and showing the connections of how things evolve, how things break apart and coalesce. And yes, you give names to the ultimate outcome, like this Coca-Cola bottle full of water. You can break this down to its most reduced state and then show people how it turns into a Coca-Cola bottle, right? But when you take allegory, you take things like the written word, rhetoric, then you can create chemical reactions and behaviors and belief systems and perceptions, and cause people to stay stuck in a specific state and cause other people to rise above another state. And so right now I'm grappling with how I'm going to write. I already know how I'm going to write this, but I want to show the connection between what people say and their association with politics, religion, and science, and then the medical holistic system taking away energy, not giving you the full capacity to realize your own potential, that you actually are a God. There is no one to revere. Even in the past, you can acknowledge that they had knowledge, and then you bring yourself up to that level of knowledge, and that you are the one that stops you from rising to that level of knowledge. And so the medical holistic system, in conjunction with politics, religion, and science, is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it keeps people in that loop of always looking up to someone and hating someone or loving someone because you come from a deficit. See, our society, when people die, are always at a deficit. When they believe they should die, always at a deficit. So they're always worshiping someone or hating someone. And so that's why we have such division in our societies, because people don't know where the hatred and the frustration and the love comes from. They think love is so wonderful. Love is fine. Love is for reproduction. Love is for when someone's at a deficit, they're reproducing a fraction of themselves. Okay? Love is made to make you destroy yourself, so that way then you can go and create something different, but you haven't really fully regained your wholeness. And so reproducing is taking fractions of yourself and spreading your seed everywhere, but never truly understanding the wholeness of you. And so that's why right now we're in a reset, because people have been reproducing fractions of themselves and fractions of themselves and fractions of themselves until the innovation is sucked out, and now it's just a glitching human who doesn't know who they are or where they come from. And if the parents haven't figured out the wholeness of themselves, then the kids are not going to figure it out. And they'll always be on a search and a hunt for their better half, or things that are missing. They don't even know what's missing because they can't put their finger on it because they don't have the words for it. And they don't have the background for it. And so this is like so freaking like complicated to try to figure out how you're going to like try to go from that. And so that's what I'm in the process of trying to figure out. How am I going to write about this? I already know that words are chemistry. Words are chemistry, and chemistry serves to cause, chemical reactions to build or to destroy. And so this thing with the gods and demigods and the fallen angels, the Book of Enoch, and then Greek mythology, which is Greek history. The Greek gods, they weren't immortal, or we would have Zeus right there. We'd know who Zeus is. We know who Poseidon is. They are real in the sense of how the more intelligent beings, how they characterized hormones and how they used hormones, which are the specific gifts and the spells and the curses they add to a prototype of a human. So the caveman, Neanderthals, even prior to that, they were the prototypes that were gifted, cursed, and spelled with specific access to hormones to give them intelligence. And then that intelligence was then being geared towards specific facets of our society: building, architect, law, chemistry, mathematics, English, and they're all connected because it's all chemistry. And so the Greek gods were the fallen angels, the one that came down and infected mankind, not so much like made it all bad, but they figured out how to control the evolution and the intelligence of mankind. So they give some people a lot more intelligence fit for a specific job and a specific innovation. Just like on the West Coast, everyone's about eating no meat, hardly any meat, organic, twigs and berries. And they're using a lot of their brain to innovate the technology. Okay, and then you have people like the Midwest, Ohio, all points in between the two coasts that are more into the physical labor. And so there's specific diets, specific programming, and it could be, there's biotech. I'm sure all the different injections, all the different prototypes that are produced in each specific area are made for the economy, for the geographical location. And so this is what was given to us way back 6, 7, 10,000 years ago, when more intelligent beings figured out how to mess with humans' DNA. And so the politics, religion, and science, like, they're all connected, but they're also reinforcing the fact that you're less than, and that there's always someone that's more powerful than you, much better than you, smarter than you. And so then you revere them, and they turn into icons. And those icons are represented in politics. Yes, Trump, Biden, all the different leaders, your congressmen, they're like little demigods, okay? And so that's in politics. Religion, you have people like Jesus, Moses, other icons of antiquity. I'm not trying to insult anyone, but that's how our system of dominant and submissive, which is, here's the star, here's the God, here's a very powerful person, and you're going to be the fan, the follower, the one that worships, always thinks that this person has more intelligence, more power, more money. And so that's always going to be, and that happens at the macro level in government, and it happens in your community level, and it also happens in families. The patriarch and the matriarch, the all-knowing mama and dada, and then you have the kids, and the kids are supposed to follow and worship mom and dad, and then you have the grandkids. And so it's always going to be that hierarchy, because we're always dying and reproducing. And so when you're dying and reproducing, you're always coming from a deficit, thinking someone is beneath you and someone is above you. And this is why we have the wars. This is why we have people always at war with each other. This is why we have people who are in conflict, because people don't know their own capabilities, their own potential. And so when they're always going to get stuff nipped and tucked and taken out, their potential decreases every single time they stop an evolutionary process. What's an evolutionary process? It's symptoms. I'm telling you, I've been feeling this virus making me hot, like, oh God, like just in the fatigue. But it's an evolution. And through that evolution, I make these connections. Like, I was watching the RGB, Ruth Bader, or RBG, the Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and how her whole life and how she came up in the Supreme Court. And so we revere people like this. And, we create roadblocks for people to gain that kind of knowledge. Does she have all the knowledge in the world? No, but she became very good at what she does. But why can't everybody do what she does? Because they have predispositions. They have deficits. They have mental and physical blocks, not allowing them to understand complex information. And so this is what we create, this hierarchy status of people who worship somebody or look down upon somebody, because of the physical and intellectual and financial deficits that we already predispose children. I mean, we all hope that our kids become like, the next president. But when you look at reality, look at the parents. What did they achieve in their life? Not saying that it's not impossible, but they really have, that kid has to be so extraordinarily gifted to be able to rise above the station that they're in. And most kids do not rise above the station that they're in because their parents came at a deficit, the kid's at a deficit, and then the kid is like trying to fit into a society that right now is in such flux. What are they going to do? When you already came in this world at a major deficit, how are you going to rise above your station? How are you going to make your family name better? How are you going to do anything in our society? And so people get very frustrated, and they start hating someone who has more intellect or is more innovative, or they love somebody. And so when you love somebody and when you hate somebody, I don't care who it is, it's because you're at a deficit. And so I realized that when you love someone or hate someone, it's because you're at a deficit. And, when you're in love, like when you're in love contracts, yeah, you're at a deficit because that's why you're with somebody. You wouldn't be with people if you weren't at a deficit on some level. And it happens on both parties. In marriages, in best friend relationships, in group mentality. And that's why I made that association that the more people you hang out with, the more deficits you actually are are sustaining, because you need certain aspects of different people. But what happens, where the issue comes into play, is the fact that it's not only the gifts that they're bringing you that you're missing, they're also bringing other baggage that you don't really need, that's still being imposed upon you. And this is where the resistance comes in. Yes, they bring in one aspect that you like, but there's other aspects that are like, holy crap. And then all of a sudden, other people's problems become your problems. And so then what you thought was like bringing in something that kind of, fills in that void, if you don't know how to resist it or adapt to that, then all of a sudden somebody else's problem comes, and then it becomes this amalgam or amorphous type of situation where you don't even know who you are because you're so stuck into that group mentality. And that's what happens in politics, religion, and science. People are attracted to politics, religion, and science because they're at a deficit, but then they're taking on more than they really can handle. They don't realize it, and then it works against them. And so, but that is part of the Greek philosophers. All the different, way back like Aristotle and Socrates. Yeah, they laid a foundation. They laid the Socratic method, the whole critical thinking. You pose a question or you create an argument, and then people debate it, and they rhetoric. I mean, you see that in politics when they're doing the filibusters and all the rhetoric. Okay, that's all Greek, the Greek way. And in colleges, it's the Greek way. It's drinking to excess until you destroy yourself, like Dionysus, and then also trying to infuse some kind of logic and reasoning if you can survive the hazing rituals in colleges, and even in groups and gangs and families. There's so many hazing rituals in groups, gangs, and families, and it's all stemming from the same thing. Is how do you keep people distracted? How do you keep people at a deficit? So then you can easier control. You see it in the queen bees out there and the king bees out there, the leaders of either their companies or their groups or their organizations. Even friendships have a hierarchy status. And maybe it's a constant, back and forth. Who's going to have more power over who? And so I look at my relationships. My husband and I, he fills in gaps where I need. I fill in the gaps where he needs. And so we have a love contract. It's called a marriage. Then I have certain friendships, very, very few, because not very many people I feel like I can learn from, and they can learn from me. But if there's something, and recently I just was given some really awesome information by someone who's been working with me, and I'm able to learn from her certain areas that I'm able to bring into my rhetoric and my information and start connecting things, computer stuff and whatever. And so there's like business contracts that you have with people, the quid pro quo. Let me learn from you, and you can learn from me, and we better our life and we live continuously. But when people are on their way out the door and they're dying and they're reproducing, what are they offering you? Or are they taking something from you on a continuous basis? When people are dying and reproducing, they are constantly taking, because they can't help but do that because they're dying. Innately, they know they're dying, and so they have so many friends, so much family, so many, things that they're involved with, because it keeps them alive, because they can't keep themselves alive. And then everybody who is feeding off each other, taking bites out of each other in large groups, whether families, friends, or whatever, then they all go over the cliff together because they cannibalize each other. No one's whole in these types of situations. And so when I'm working with somebody, they have to be at my level, which means that, they have to be not only understand the jelly juice mentality, especially when I'm married to someone, I know what I'm dealing with. So I'm strong enough for both my husband and I. If my husband decides to figure it out with me, then great as far as this. But if he doesn't, that's fine. I'm strong enough for both of us. I will figure it out with him. But when I'm working with somebody, whether it's in business or something with my book, they have to be on the same level as me. Because if they're at a deficit, they will take and take and take. And so that's why I've gone through so many different partners or collaborations, because not everybody is evolving to the level that I'm comfortable with. And maybe they could think the same thing as me, that I'm not evolving to their level of whatever, and that's fine. We all want somebody to be an equal. Well, not everybody. Some people abuse their power, abuse their influence. And so at first you think you're like a friend or you're like this, when really you're just another fan. And that's how people view some people, is that you're not really that important. You're just a fan. You're just, part of the resources that they need at their disposal. And I know that's very like cynical, but you have to realize that if you're not on the same page, evolving together, making your life together, then somebody is taking resources from somebody on a continuous basis. And when you're not evolving and you're on the decline, no one's really, they're not innovative. So they're going to be taking resources from each other until they're over the cliff. And so there's even that too, where they're in this, self-destructive relationship that's equal. And so, yeah, when you are like this with somebody's either evolving or devolving when you're in a resistance type of relationship. So you can also be in equilibrium, where there is a good balance of give and take. At some point, there's going to be someone that's going to need more, but if you're already in a contract with someone, then you deal with being in this where it's a little bit lopsided. And it happens. That's what marriages are for, is to know that sometimes it's going to be lopsided. Sometimes it'll be equal, but sometimes it'll also be lopsided. And so as long as it's not so like the person isn't beating you up or causing harm to you in body, mind, and spirit, then you stay with it and you deal with it and you figure out how to work with that, because that's what you committed yourself to. And so that's, yeah. So it's very interesting. So I'm going to figure out how to write this, but I figure I would verbalize this. And I see the bigger picture, and it's really interesting. And it's going to be very inflammatory to those who exhibit this, because we know people out there who have a lot of friends, who have big families. Since I come from a very small family and adopted, so I really don't have any kind of blood relatives anywhere that I know of. It's easy for me to go from group to group to family and try to fit in. But when people are on a decline and I'm on the incline, how do you fit in? Maybe for a certain amount of time, but eventually, when there's overwhelming, devolving energy over, just so aggressive, you got to save yourself. And so that's why autonomy is so amazing, because then you can finally start getting pieces back to yourself that have been taken by friends and family, the medical system, the holistic system. And you do the J juice, do a few resets, and you eat all the food in the food supply and deal with the crazy aggressive energy of evolution. And you regain back what the system has taken from you ever since day one in your genetic line. And that's the whole point of the JJ mentality, is taking back what was taken from you today, what could potentially be in the future, and definitely from the past. And so that's why when I say that words are chemistry, people need to change the way they speak. They need to stop reading old doctrines and old formulas as a way to be. Oh, you don't have any friends. When half the world is fucking going down the cliff, maybe I don't want to have all the friends in the world out there. They're going to take me down with them. Okay? So maybe it's okay to be autonomous. Maybe it's okay to be anti-therapeutic and understand why. Understand about why they exist, but then learn how to articulate why you're anti-therapeutic, why you're anti-medical holistic, why you are pro-salt, pro-sugar, pro-pain, and pro-evolution, and pro-virus. Okay? That maybe the Bible holds so much aggressive energy that maybe dropping scripture everywhere isn't really, it's counterintuitive. But I can't. It's very difficult to get somebody who is in the religious world out of it. I know it. They can kind of soften their approach around it, But most people who have been raised in a solution in a chemistry, such as the Bible, such as politics, Democrat, Republican, Constitutionalist, Patriot, a liberal, when you try to take them out of their element, if they don't have the means to evolve themselves, and even if they do, it's going to be a battle for some time. Like, I'm waiting for some of my jelly juicers to finally put the Bible aside, finally put their Constitution aside, finally put their liberal rhetoric aside, finally put all of these old doctrines, these old ways of being, aside for just a minute, even the conspiracy world, and first start working on themselves. Get out of the activism. Stop trying to save people. That's why I don't promote jelly juice everywhere. People say, yeah, you should do jelly juice. But, when you tell someone you should do jelly juice, help with my kidneys, help with this, help with that, you're promoting a cure. Already right there, you're coming from a savior point of view. What really is the ultimate with the JJ mentality is you work on yourself and you start with exemplifying what a balanced person going through evolution does. And that would be to your own Facebook audience. Not trying to sell J juice to a stranger who knows nothing about me, really knows nothing about you, and all they see is, oh, another freaking protocol they have to go and research and go and figure out. When really the key to promoting J juice is to start with your own immediate world and sharing it with an audience like the JJ crowd when you've noticed that you're going through an evolution. And maybe you used to be an activist. Maybe you used to be an activist. You went out there and promoted, or went out there and punched air, and now you don't want to punch air. Maybe you used to drop scripture all the freaking time, and now you're like, you know what? The scripture was a crutch for me because I didn't have the words to explain where I'm coming from. And maybe there are loaded words in the scripture that are so divisive and so aggressive, or so loving and so toxic positive that it's made to keep people addicted to a crutch that they can't develop more than what these words are given. It's like it's like buying ready-made food all the time. Processed food isn't horrible, but you got to bring in other ingredients and create your own, your own dish. Can I eat processed food every single day? I mean, I could if I had to, but sometimes it's great to make things from scratch. Sometimes it's great to just I made a cookie bake last night. So sugar cookie bake. I found it was like a hot milk cake, but I didn't really follow the recipe, and so I just threw everything together, so it became very thick. And so I just threw it inside of a 9-inch pan, and it became a cookie thing. Okay? Now, I could have bought cookie dough and just cut them up and put them in the oven. So sometimes, it's okay but you got to look at the processed food. Maybe it's very aggressive. Maybe there's certain things that are aggressive in the processed food. It's not bad for you, but there's got to be a combination. And so I know this is kind of like, oh, then you should always go organic. But there are old recipes, and then you can create new recipes. Okay, you can create new recipes, and sometimes the old processed food needs to be updated. They don't have some of the old foods back in the 1980s because they've updated the processed food. So let's make a better analogy. Instead of saying, okay, no more processed food, which that's not my intention. I'm just trying to figure out how to deal with these analogies, not come off hypocritical. But some of the foods out there were updated. They've re-updated the recipe, and it's still processed. It still has a conglomeration of ingredients: fatty acid, amino acid, prohormones, and minerals. And it made by the same label. But I'm not saying you rewrite the Bible, but why even, I don't know. But that's the thing that is available, is what could we do to take a text and rewrite it in a different way, create a new Bible that doesn't have all the old inflammatory words like end times, Armageddon, Revelations. They're not always quoting someone who's dead. Yes, they have validity. They were the foundation. But now we're into a new world. We keep bringing back old recipes into the new world. Yeah, it's nostalgia. But you acknowledge it and let it go, and then you are continuously creating the new world. It's like, like watching, a cartoon where he has all this material, and he looks in the past, and there's all like the yellow brick road or something, and then there's this blank future, and he has all this material, and he's just pounding the nails in the wood and building the road as he's walking. And that's kind of what I'm looking for, is in the JJ mentality, is you build the road as you're walking. So that's my whole take on this JJ protocol, is that we are building the road as we're walking through time, and we're staying alive. We're not dying and reproducing and producing fractions of ourselves scattered around the universe, always in constant search for our better half or our better halves. And that, we can become whole people, and then we can produce fractions of children and build our children to be whole, not fractions in our society looking for stuff. Because a whole person can be good at anything. You put your mind to something, whatever it is, a whole person could learn it. You don't have to take a fraction of somebody who has the predisposition of being mechanically inclined and exploit them and then let them die in the next 20, 30 years. You can take a person who is whole, who is evolved to their community, teach them how to do stuff. But, would I want to go and build a car? A lot of machinery. I don't know if I really want to go and build a car. But there are some people who, I guess, are predisposed to that. They have the body for it. To have the fear around machinery, as long as you know how to use it safely. But I don't think I'd want to go and work on a car and do the things that some of these people do. So we can program people to be fearless around machinery. And so we can foster them to be very a whole person and still have a proclivity towards specific aspects of our society. And so I think that's where I'm coming from, is that we don't always have to program our kids at a very young age with deficits, and their only thing to do in life is mechanics. Maybe they can do other stuff, but we do need people in the blue collar world. But now that we have machines that can do stuff for us, we won't necessarily need to have a lot of blue-collar people, because we have machines that will do stuff. Which means that now blue-collar people have to figure out how to evolve with society's needs. And yeah, that's why the Great Reset, because our society is evolving, and not everyone's going to survive the viruses and the infection that goes along with it, because they don't know how to neutralize it with salt, and they're afraid of salt. And so anyways, I'm going to go, but I really wanted to verbalize about old text and word chemistry and our society and fractions of ourselves and wholeness and all that. All right, bye.